All right, good morning, and thank you for joining. My name is Andy White, and I will be your host today. Hope you and your families are staying safe and doing well during this COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we want to discuss most recent 911 legislation mandates, also referred to as Kari's Law, and we'll see how you're able to configure your Epygi PBX to comply with the changes. Okay, just a legal disclaimer. The information we discuss today, it's my own interpretation of the rules that have been set forth by the FCC, and I would encourage each person to do their own analysis and review of the mandates. All right, in August 2019, the FCC adopted rules implementing two federal laws related to emergency calling. These were Kari's Law and Section 506 of the Ray-Bombs Act. All right. Kari's Law, it's named in honor of Kari Hunt, who was killed by her estranged husband in a motel room in Marshall, Texas in 2013. Mrs. Hunt's 9-year-old daughter tried to call 911 for help 4 times from the motel room, but the call never went through because she did not know that the motel's phone system required dialing a 9 for an outbound line before dialing the 911. So she would have had to dial the 9 and then 911. All right, so that's how this law came into effect. So Kari's Law has two rules set forth. One is the direct dialing, and the second is the notification for MLTS. That's the multi-line telephone system. And direct dialing for 911 states that any phone that can dial to the PSTN should be able to reach emergency services by simply dialing the digits 911 without having to dial a prefix digit. For example, like dialing 9 and then 911. Okay, it also states for emergency notifications, all 911 calls must provide a notification to alert personnel that a 911 call was made. It should include the caller's callback number and where it was dialed from. The notification can be sent via email, SMS, voicemail, etc. It's just got to be a notification sent to somebody letting them know that a 911 call was placed. Okay, it doesn't specify exactly what information must be provided in the notification. The person being notified, they can be on-site or they could even be off-site. It's just the main person in need to know, and the person that could be most helpful in the situation. All right, when did Kari's Law go into effect? It's already taken place. That was February 17th of this year. And it applies to any MLTS that is manufactured, sold, or installed starting from February 17th, 2020. It does not apply to any MLTS installed prior to that date. Okay, the next mandate was Section 506 of the Ray-Bombs Act. Okay, the Ray-Bombs Act itself was named after a close friend of U.S. Congressman Greg Waldom. He's previous chairman of the Congressional Telecommunications Subcommittee. And it basically requires that a dispatchable location be sent to the 911 dispatch center when an emergency call is received. Okay, what is a dispatchable location? It's basically a location delivered to the PSAP. The PSAP is a public service answering point or 911 operator. So it's a location delivered to the PSAP with a 911 call that includes the street address of the calling party plus additional information such as a suite number, apartment number, floor number, or similar information necessary to adequately identify the location of the calling party. All right, the compliancy dates haven't come up yet. The first one is January 6th of 2021. And that requires, it's required for on-premise fixed devices. So any phone that's hardwired to the system, that would be considered a fixed device. All right, and then the following year, same date, 2022, it requires for on-premise fixed devices, but also non-fixed devices and off-premise devices. Okay, so non-fixed devices, those would be your wireless phones, your deck phones, all the cordless phones out there, and soft phones even, and also off-premise, like a remote extension. Those would also are supposed to be compliant. All right, so how will the dispatchable location be updated? Okay, first method would be automatically. The MLTS would automatically provide the precise location. That's the preferred method. Okay, and the second option would be for the user to update and confirm their location, maybe with a system prompt or something like that. The second method is not going to be as reliable, because who knows how often the user would be made to update that information. And obviously, it's when they dial 911, it's not a good time to be updating your location. So there's a lot, I think, still to be figured out with that part of it. As far as how much, there's a lot of things that come into play. What about soft phones? That they're on the road. You got the like the e-call application. You could be on your soft phone. You could be anywhere. How would that information be sent? What if the guy was connected via, a person was connected via a VPN connection, like OpenVPN? They could be anywhere. So a lot of these things are going to be difficult to determine, and they're still working through that piece, the best I can tell. All right, a lot of, I just pulled up some references. A lot of these are taken from the FCC website. All right, as far as the multi-line telephone systems, Kari's Law and Ray-Baum's Act, direct dialing notification, dispatchable location requirements, that's off the fcc.gov website. Implementing Kari's Law in Section 506, also on their website. Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. Okay, so all these are available. A few quick searches, you'll pull up a lot of information, more information than you'll need, but a lot of it's some pretty heavy reading. But information is out there, so we want to see how we can implement some of these within the PBX itself. Okay, so I'm logged into a QX200 today, and first thing we want to start off with is with the system setup. If we go through the basic setup, and then we look at the system configuration wizard, and you're going to get to about the fourth page into it, and there's a place here for emergency codes and PSTN access codes. Okay, so you can enter in here, you can enter the 911. Actually, I think it's the default. And just below that, you can put like a dial 9 access code, or overseas you dial 0, or leave it blank. And I usually tell people, when I'm doing the trainings, I usually tell people, I usually leave these blank, actually, to be honest. And I'll show you why here in a moment. But we do put that in there as I believe as a default. And when you specify the 911, then it prompts you for your call alert settings. And we're going to look at this more detail a little bit. But you can generate a system event log. You can send an email notification. You can send a text message, and you can send a voice message, a voicemail, or you could do all of the above. Okay, and then once you finish your settings, confirm your settings, and then we can go into telephony and we can look at the call routing entries. All right, so right at the very top was the entry that I just created. Basically, it states that if user dials 911, it's going to make an outbound call on the FXO, one of the FXO ports. Okay, so these are any of the onboard FXOs. And if for any reason that call should fail, for example, if I don't have an FXO connected, if for any reason that call would fail, then it would go through and it would find the next matching pattern in the table. That would be the second entry where it might go out on one of my SIP trunks. Okay, you notice that this entry is not, you can't do an edit on it. The only thing that you can do at this point, if you don't have FXOs, for example, you need to, I would recommend that you delete it. You can always add these in later. You can add an entry at another time. Just don't forget to do it. All right. So now if we go back to the telephony call routing, you can see that the entry has been removed. Okay, so I can add the entry manually, of course. I can do an add, and then I could specify the pattern, the 911, and I could make an outbound call, whether it be an FXO or or on my SIP trunk, either one. So you can also manually add that entry. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add a SIP account, just a test account, a fictitious account at that, using the voice over IP carrier wizard, so you can see what's created when you go through the creating your SIP trunk. We'll just call it a test ITSP. Give it a simple password. All right, this would be as if I'm adding a SIP trunk in, okay? And I usually recommend that you enable the RTP proxy option. And then when you add it, you can specify how you're going to call, whether you're going to be dialing with a prefix digit like a 9, or you could add a pattern like 10 question marks. And then you've got a place just below that for your emergency code, the emergency 911 code. And then let's say if we got incoming calls to this account to the auto tenant, and there's a failover to the PSTN. The PSTN in this case would be our FXOs. Okay, we go back to the call routing table. And you'll see that there's been four entries that were added. Okay, entries 15, 16, 17, and 18. The first two were to dial with a 9. We delete the 9 and make a call out on that SIP trunk. And then there's your failover code. If for any reason that call is not working, it would go out on the FXO. So that would be actually with your dialing 9 to get out of the system if you use a prefix digit. But here's your 911 code that I entered. So it says, dial 911. It's going to make a first choice call out to the SIP trunk. If for any reason it fails, then at that point, make a call out on the FXO ports, okay? So in addition to the account that was created, which was in the extensions management, it also created the call routing entries. All right, so I just wanted to show that. Now let's do an edit on one of the entries and look at the settings. Let's say if I were to use this one that we created, we can use our shortcut here. Just do an edit, See in the bottom left, there's some options. If you click on any one of these, you're going to add some additional settings that you'll be prompted for as you go through the wizard. So this is the dial 911. It goes out on a SIP trunk. And then you have your call alerts settings. So I could generate a system event log, an email. I can do a text message or a voicemail or all the above. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight that. Okay, and as I've mentioned, I do have one, a real one that I've been using. Okay, and I've got the same settings in there with the alert, the call alert. And so that would be the real one. For now, I'm just going to delete these test entries that I created. We're not going to be needing those anymore. So I'll just delete those. Just wanted to show how you can add those in there and what does get created. You'll see here that there's a 933 entry. Okay, and if we take a look at that entry, let's play with this one a little bit. 933 is the test code that you can dial to make a test call to the 911 system without actually making an actual real call. It's frowned upon to make 911 calls, and you can even get fined for making 911 calls without an actual emergency. So you want to obviously, if at all possible, you don't. I know you can call and tell them that it's a test call, and they might look the other way or whatever, but you're really not supposed to dial the 911. Okay, so you can dial the 933 instead. That's a test system. Now, when we call that, we want to make sure that we're getting some alerts. Got the call alert enabled. And I can generate a system event log. I can send an email to my email address. I don't have SMS, but you could send a SMS message. And you can leave a voicemail to an extension or extensions. You can separate these couple entries, put some multiple entries in there separated by with a comma. All right, so let's go ahead and dial the 933 and see what we get. So my test phone here, we'll dial the 933.
911 test system. Your account is in live mode. Your subscriber identifier is 97236600999. Your location is currently provisioned. The location coverage will be enhanced 911.
Our address is 123 West Main Street, Building 3, Dallas, Texas 75208.
After the tone, please record a brief message. The recorded message will be played back to you afterwards.
This is Andy, just a test call.
This is Andy, just a test call. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the a 911 test call without actually dialing 911. Okay, as a result of that call, I just want to check my notification messages. All right, and okay, so let me go ahead and open this. So the first is the call alert notification that came in. So it basically tells you that a call made via the flow route, dialing 933 from the extension number was on. It gives me the timestamp. So here's your notification, and then I also get voicemail. Okay, and if we play the voicemail, let me go ahead and open that. Okay, so just let you know that an emergency call was made. We can play it again. Okay, so you can use that emergency call. You received a voicemail and let you know that somebody dialed that particular call routing entry. In this case, the emergency code, um, and it tells me which extension it was that dialed that. Okay, so it determines the location. It knows your location based on your caller ID. Okay, so in this case, the caller ID that was sent was this caller ID here, 972 to 3660099. Okay, you do have options. You can modify that caller ID. Let's take a look at that caller ID field. So it's basically specifying from any extension I'm going to use this particular caller ID. I could have said there's different options in here, so you could dial, for example, I can apply this to the extension 100 or to the extension in the 100 range. So from 100 to 199, for example. So you can make this specific to certain extensions. You can have multiple entries. That'll work. I prefer using a different option, and that would be with the class of service. If you do have, let's say, multiple DIDs, and you need those to be showing certain locations when they dial the 911 dispatch operator, you're going to have multiple 911 entries. Okay, so for example, and then each one would have a different caller ID and apply that caller ID to certain extensions. Now, how do you do that? I showed you one method. If you just have, if you only have a certain range of extensions, maybe you have a couple customers, maybe you've got them divided into 100 range and 200 range, then the method I showed you works pretty easy. But if you have extensions that are all over the place, they all have different caller IDs that are going to be used for outbound calls, especially when dialing 911, you can use your class of service. Class of service works pretty good. I'm just going to call this, let's say, Group A and Group B. Maybe Group A applies to a certain DID, and then Group B would be a different DID, for example. Okay, so we'll add two different groups. Group A, Group B. And now I'm going to enable the class of service screening. All right, so now I can go back to my call routing table, and I can edit this entry. If this is the 911 entry, I can edit the entry, and it could have the class of service. It'll have the class of service setting here, and basically you're specifying which groups belong to this particular call routing entry. Now, the only thing I haven't done is specify which extensions are in Group A or Group B. And for that, you can go to your extensions management table. and you can choose. I can using my shift key. I can select a group of extensions, do an edit. So you can do a multiple edit. You can see that it includes the extensions 100 through 105. Go to the class of service settings, and I can specify all these extensions are in group A. All right, so now when any of those extensions in group A picks up the phone and they make an outbound call, they're going to get the caller ID associated with this particular entry. And then I could have a second entry that would apply to group B. All right, so that's probably the easiest way to do that, all right, at this point. Now that there is we also mentioned that you can receive a voicemail notification. Okay, um, so that when you get that notification at one of the options in there was to generate the call for the caller was to generate a voicemail, and the voicemail notification, you choose which extension or extensions it'll be sent to. Okay, one of those extensions can be, say, like a general voicemail box. So like this extension in my extensions management table, extension 250 is a virtual extension. Okay, it has no IP line assigned to it, so that could be a virtual extension. And it could be for my general voicemail. So I go to my voicemail settings. There's an option here for shared mailbox, the access list, and you just need to go in here and add. You can just specify any with a wildcard or the star. So basically, you're saying that this voicemail box can be accessed from any extension in the PBX. By doing that simple little option, by adding that, you can now go to your interfaces. You can go to your IP line settings. Take a look at one of your IP lines. Let's look at the one for this extension 106. You go to programmable keys. And then on one of your keys, you can configure it for you can see it adds, by enabling that access list from any, it adds that option, shared voicemail box, extension 250. It now adds it into the drop-down list so that you can be a general voicemail. So now you can have a key here that's labeled so that when they get that voicemail, you can actually label it, let's say 911 alert. And you can have a key that's when somebody dials the 911, that key is going to be lit. They press that key and that they're going to hear that same message that I played for you earlier, that the 911 call was made, and gives you the extension number. So now you're going to be able to alert somebody locally at the front desk, and they're going to be able to see it, and they'll know which extension it was, and they'll, that extension number should correlate to a room somewhere that that they're going to have be able to identify that location. All right, now when you get the notification, when I got the notification, the voicemail, when I got it via email, it sent me an email as well, voicemail to email. It sent me a notification on that email that I received. It told me gave me the display name. So for right now, you can add in the display name field, and you can add, if it's required, if you need to do this to provide the location here presently, you can use your display name field to add in a location identifier. It's Andy, 5th floor, room 510, for example. Okay, I can see us probably adding for this dispatchable location. I can, as we begin to understand a little bit better and what we're going to need to do, I can see us probably adding a new field in this table that might be called location, and maybe not just one field, but maybe there's a couple different fields that that could be updated. When I called the 911, or in this case we called the 933 test number, it made a call and it gave me my my location. Okay, that location was passed along because of my caller ID, and in this case I'm using a flow route. And in flow route, that you can specify the E911, your addresses. You can provide different addresses. And then, so for example, with Andy's office, you know, get the I just put in a 123 Main Street fictitious address in here. Okay, so it would, and that's what was played back when I dialed the 933 test. And then you associate that location with each of your different DIDs. Okay, so that they know that's what the provider will be sending to the 911 dispatch operator, is the location based on your caller ID. And I imagine the same is going to work with your PRI trunks. You can do the same with your provider. With FXOs, with POTS lines, you can't modify anything. You can't send anything out. You can't tell it which caller ID or anything like that. The only thing that they know is your actual 10-digit phone number, and that 10-digit phone number is assigned to a physical street address location. So I don't know how they're going to provide dispatchable location to customers in the future that are using FXOs. To be honest, I don't know how that's going to work. So there's still a lot of questions out there to be answered. But that's going to play out, and I'm sure we're going to get our answers sooner than later as people begin to try to implement these requirements. So that concludes the discussion. That's all we need to go over today. We do have some good things coming up. Just once again, as far as a couple plugs for some upcoming releases, we're going to have integration with MS Teams. There's been a lot of enhancements with the EC Mon. If you haven't looked at that lately, you're going to want to take a look at it. We can provide, of course, you can get remote access to your QX or ECQX PBXs even when they're behind a firewall. You can do the location mapping, so you can put the physical location. You can show that on a map of where your systems are located. You can do a system event notification via email or even with a phone call, so that you can, this is all with ECMon, okay? So you can be notified, let's say even in the middle of the night, you can get a phone call. You might not want it, but it's better to find out. If your customer is having some issues, you want to find out ahead of, before they are even aware of it. And we're also going to be adding a GUI emulator, so you can create your configurations and things like that. You can choose your system, create a config and save it, and then upload it to your PBX. So that's one of the things that'll be added. And then also we have a release coming out probably about the middle of May. It's going to have some new options, and one of those I'm looking forward to is the call park enhancements to allow automated call parking. So that's going to be, I think, a real useful feature for especially for the retail sector. All right, well, that's all we had for today. So I want to go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording. I want to thank you for joining.